March 25th, 1990, Boston. It was 13 minutes past midnight. Security guard Richard Abeth of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum encountered unexpected visitors at the door. Two police officers claimed they had received a report about a disturbance related to the St. Patrick's Day party held at the museum. When Abeth opened the door, he unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would trigger the greatest art theft case in history. 81 minutes later, 13 priceless artworks would disappear, and the FBI would begin one of their most complex investigations that would last 33 years. A perfect night, a perfect plan. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum was a prestigious art institution located in Boston's Fenway District, bearing its founder's name. Opened in 1903, the museum housed Isabella Stewart Gardner's personal collection, with each piece displayed exactly where the founder had specified in her will. This rule would become both the museum's greatest attraction and one of the elements that would draw thieves that night. The night of March 24th was routine at the museum. The last visitors had departed. Cleaning crews had finished their work. Only two security guards remained, 23-year-old Richard Abeth and 25-year-old Randy Heston. Neither were art historians. They were working temporarily in these positions. The museum's security system was equipped with 1980s technology consisting of motion sensors and cameras. However, this system had a significant vulnerability. The security guards' patrol routes were predetermined, and anyone who knew this routine could predict where the guards would be. After midnight, Abeth had completed his regular patrol round and began waiting at the security desk. Heston was carrying out his assigned duties on the museum's upper floor. Meanwhile, outside the museum, two men were making their final preparations. The two men wore authentic Boston Police Department uniforms and fake badges. They carried forged police identification cards and detailed intelligence about the museum's security routines. The anatomy of deception. At 1:24 a.m., the doorbell rang. Security camera footage showed two police officers standing at the door. When Abeth spoke through the intercom, the officers said they had received a report about the party held at the museum and needed to conduct a check. This seemed like a normal situation to Abeth because the St. Patrick's Day celebration had indeed taken place, and sometimes complaints came in after such events. Abeth violated the museum's strict security protocol by opening the door. Normal procedure was to not admit anyone to the museum, even police. If there were visitors, the security guard was supposed to go outside and speak with them. However, Abeth, being young and inexperienced, either didn't fully know this protocol or didn't take it seriously. When the two fake police officers entered, they told Abeth they wanted to check his identification. This also seemed like a normal procedure. When Abeth left the security desk and came over to them, the fake officers told him he was under arrest. From that moment on, Abeth completely lost control of the situation. The thieves immediately handcuffed Abeth and moved him away from the security desk to prevent him from disabling the security system. They then called for Heston and subdued him in the same manner. The two security guards were tied up with tape in the museum's basement and blindfolded. The thieves also disabled the main control of the security system, causing the motion sensors to stop working. 81 minutes of art massacre. The thieves were now completely free in the museum and began a systematic looting that lasted 81 minutes. However, this was not a random theft. The works they selected were among the most valuable pieces in art history, and the knowledge they displayed in selecting these works was of the type only an expert art historian could possess. Their first target was Vermeer's painting The Concert in the Dutch Room. This work was one of only 34 known Vermeer paintings and was worth $200 million alone. The thieves carefully cut the painting from its frame and rolled it up. This technique was a professional method used to minimize damage to the artwork. They then continued with Rembrandt's works. His painting, Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee, was Rembrandt's only known seascape and held a unique place in art history. They cut this painting from its frame using the same careful technique. Rembrandt's portrait, A Lady and Gentleman in Black, met the same fate. Most surprising was their decision to also take 5 sketches by Edgar Degas. These sketches were incomparably lower in value than the other paintings, but the thieves took them anyway. This would become an important clue for the FBI, because this selection indicated that the thieves either had a specific purpose or had a buyer who had pre-ordered these particular works. The most mysterious part was why the thieves didn't take some very valuable works. There were paintings in the museum much more valuable than the works they stole, but they didn't touch these at all. This situation suggested either their time was limited or they were targeting only specific works. The FBI takes action. The next morning at 8:15 a.m., when museum staff came to work, they encountered the horrifying truth. The security guards were found tied up in the basement, and 13 priceless artworks were missing. The Boston police were immediately called, and when police understood the magnitude of the incident, they brought in the FBI. Special Agent Robert Whitman from the FBI's Boston office was an experienced agent specialized in art crimes. When Whitman arrived at the scene, he understood that what he encountered would be among the biggest cases of his career. The total value of the stolen works was estimated at $500 million for that period, which was the largest art theft amount in history. The first task was to examine the security camera recordings. The cameras had recorded the entry of the 2 fake police officers into the museum, but their faces were not clearly visible. The recordings showed that the thieves had stayed in the museum for approximately 81 minutes and had worked systematically. Whitman's team first questioned the security guards. As Richard Abath and Randy Heston recounted the trauma they experienced, FBI agents noted every detail. Abath's decision to open the door was the first clue in the investigation. The FBI, thinking that such a large theft couldn't be spontaneous, concluded that the thieves had prior knowledge of the museum's security procedures. The investigation's first phase, internal connections. The FBI's first hypothesis was that this could be an inside job. The thieves' intimate knowledge of the museum's security routines suggested that someone from the inside might have helped. Whitman's team began examining all of the museum's personnel. Richard Abath was naturally at the top of the suspects list. His violation of security protocol and his behavior that seemed almost as if he was expecting the thieves' arrival aroused suspicion. The FBI thoroughly investigated Abath's background, circle of friends, and financial situation. However, the investigation that lasted for months revealed that Abath was simply an inexperienced young security guard who didn't fully know the protocols. The museum's other personnel were also examined one by one. Everyone's background was investigated, from cleaning staff to the museum director. The FBI also reviewed the museum's former employees. During this process, it was revealed that some people working at the museum had financial difficulties, but none could be directly connected to the theft. An important clue was found during this phase of the investigation. A few days before the theft night, 2 people who made a tourist visit to the museum had asked unusual questions to the security guards. These people had tried to obtain detailed information about the museum's security systems, security guards' shift hours, and emergency procedures. Unfortunately, records of this visit had not been kept at that time, and this clue couldn't be followed up. Art world connections. The FBI expanded the investigation to examine international art trafficking networks. $500 million worth of art was too large an amount to be sold easily. These works were so famous that no museum or legitimate collector could purchase them. This situation suggested that the works were either stolen for private collectors or would be used for ransom. Whitman began establishing connections with international art trafficking networks. Interpol's databases were searched and similar theft cases were investigated. In Europe, particularly in Italy and France, it was known that organized crime groups were active in art trafficking. At this stage, there were several names that caught the FBI's attention. The Patriarca family, an Italian-American organized crime family operating in the Boston area, was a known organization experienced in art trafficking. The FBI placed members of this organization under close surveillance and began wiretapping operations. After months of surveillance, it was determined that some members of the Patriarca family had engaged in suspicious activities during the theft days. However, no direct evidence could be found. The FBI tried to pressure organization members, but no one talked. Technological clues and analysis. Although technology in the 1990s wasn't as advanced as today, the FBI tried to analyze the evidence at hand in the best way possible. Security camera recordings were examined repeatedly by video experts. The thieves' height, weight, and movement patterns were analyzed. Physical evidence left at the museum was also carefully collected. Fingerprints, footprint patterns, and textile fibers were examined in FBI laboratories. The thieves had been very careful, but they had still left some traces. One of the most important clues was the cutting technique used by the thieves. The method they used to cut the paintings from their frames was the technique a professional art restorer would use. This showed that the thieves were either educated in art or had received help from someone expert in this field. The FBI began examining all art restorers and art historians in the Boston area. University art departments, private restoration workshops, and museums' technical personnel were investigated one by one. This work further expanded the investigation, and hundreds of people were questioned. International dimension. As the investigation progressed, the international dimensions of the theft also began to emerge. The stolen works were so valuable that a global network was needed to sell them. The FBI began cooperating with Interpol to monitor art markets in Europe. Art galleries operating in tax havens like Switzerland, Monaco, and Liechtenstein were examined with special attention. It was known that in these countries there were galleries that conducted buying and selling without questioning the provenance of works. At this stage of the investigation, there were several international connections that caught the FBI's attention. It was determined that some people thought to be connected to the Irish Republican Army, IRA, were operating in America during the same period. The hypothesis that the IRA might have committed art theft to raise money to buy weapons was considered. To investigate this connection, the FBI cooperated with British and Irish security forces. After months of work, some suspicious connections were found, but direct evidence couldn't be obtained. Media and public pressure. The Gardner Museum theft had created a major echo in the media. Starting from Boston local media and extending to national and international press, the incident was closely followed. This situation created both advantages and disadvantages for the FBI. On one hand, thanks to media interest, many reports were coming from citizens. Most of these reports were useless, but some contained valuable clues. The FBI had to take every report seriously and examine them, which significantly increased the investigation team's workload. On the other hand, media pressure was forcing the FBI to get quick results. The public expected such a major theft to be solved, and pressure increased with each passing day. This situation sometimes caused FBI agents to act hastily and not investigate some clues thoroughly enough. Museum management also wanted quick results from the FBI. The stolen works were the museum's most valuable pieces, and their failure to return was seriously damaging the museum's prestige. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum offered a $10 million reward for the return of the works. This reward was a very large amount for that period and showed the seriousness of the incident. Investigation turning points. As years passed, the FBI experienced several important turning points in the investigation. In 2013, the FBI's Boston office organized a press conference and made an important announcement. FBI officials announced that they had identified the stolen works and had important clues about where the works were located. This announcement showed that there was an important development in the investigation after 23 years. The FBI stated that they had received reliable reports that the works had been seen in the Connecticut and Philadelphia areas. However, they also added that they couldn't pinpoint the exact location of the works and couldn't conduct a recovery operation. In 2018, the FBI revived the investigation and informed the public again. Using new technologies, old evidence was reanalyzed and some new clues emerged. Thanks to DNA analysis, fingerprint technologies, and video enhancement techniques, details that couldn't be detected before were revealed. Current situation and future. After 33 years, the Gardner Museum theft still hasn't been solved, and the stolen works are still missing. The FBI continues to actively follow the case and regularly evaluates new clues. The museum has raised the reward amount to $10 million and still awaits the return of the works. This case has become one of the FBI's longest-running investigations, and agents specialized in art crimes have dealt with this case for generations. Every new technological development creates an opportunity to re-examine old evidence. The investigation has also led to important changes in museum security. Starting with the Gardner Museum, museums worldwide have completely renovated their security systems and established multi-layered protection systems. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft has gone down in history as a case that shows both the FBI's determination and the sophistication level of organized crime. Even after 33 years, the investigation continues and hope still exists, because the FBI's experience in art crimes and technological capabilities are improving every day.